Hey everyone and welcome. I am so glad you're here with me today because we are about to dive into something that feels incredibly personal and honestly really important to me. We're talking about the true, powerful, and so often untold stories of women who didn't just passively live through history, but who got in there and actively shaped it. These are films about the creators who were told their brilliant ideas were just frivolous, the fighters who were told they were being too loud, too much, and the survivors who literally had to rebuild themselves from the ashes. We're going on a journey through 19 films that prove, without a single shadow of a doubt, that the most compelling, the most inspiring characters aren't frictional. They're the ones who actually walked this earth. So get ready because this is so much more than just a list of movies. It's a true celebration of resilience. I mean, have you ever had that feeling? You're curled up on the couch, just watching a film, and suddenly it's like it's speaking directly to you. I will never forget the first time that happened to me. I was watching this story about a woman who was constantly, relentlessly told her dreams were too big, her voice was too sharp, her ambitions were, well, they were simply too much for a woman. And as I watched her navigate the world's constant dismissal with this quiet, unshakable determination, I felt this literal jolt of recognition. It was like seeing my own secret fears and my most defiant hopes reflected right back at me on the screen. Her story, which was separated from my own life by decades and totally different circumstances, suddenly felt like a piece of my own story. It just wasn't a movie anymore. It was this profound, validating moment. It was like a mirror showing me not just who I was, but giving me the silent permission to be who I could become. That's the incredible magic we're going to explore today. And that's really the heart of it all, isn't it? These films are so much more than just 2 hours of entertainment. For me, and I honestly think for so many of us, they act as these incredible blueprints for resilience. They're tangible proof that other women have faced down absolutely impossible odds, crushing societal pressure, and their own very real, very personal demons. And they have chosen not just to survive, but to rise. They remind us that history isn't just this dry collection of dates and grand events decided by men in war rooms. No, it's this vast, intricate tapestry woven from the threads of individual lives, individual choices, and an incredible, enduring strength that lives inside the female spirit. These stories don't just entertain us. They fundamentally expand our understanding of what is truly possible. Okay, so are you ready to dive in? Here's our roadmap for the journey we're taking together. We're going to explore these 19 magnificent films through 3 core themes that I believe define so much of the female experience. First up, we'll look at the women who had to carve out a space for themselves in a world that was actively trying to deny them one in forging an independent voice. Then we're going to turn to the women who looked at an unjust world and decided to take the entire system on in fighting for a just world. And finally, we'll explore what is often the most difficult path of all, that deeply personal one in the journey back to self. It's going to be a deep and I hope really inspiring ride. So let's begin with the creators, the visionaries. I mean, the women who literally built entire worlds from their imagination. This first group of women fought their battles not with swords on a battlefield, but in the realm of ideas, of art, of business, and of culture. They lived in eras that were constantly telling them to be quiet, to be ornamental, to conform, and to just accept their designated place in society. But instead, they picked up a pen, a needle and thread, a whisk, or a microphone, and they built something that was entirely unapologetically their own. Their stories are this powerful testament to what is truly a revolutionary act, the act of trusting your own unique voice. Our first story is one that literally redefined the silhouette of the modern woman. I mean, we all know the name Chanel, but before those interlocking C's became this global symbol of luxury, Gabrielle Coco Chanel was an orphan, a seamstress, a cabaret singer, just trying to scratch out a living in provincial France. The film Coco Before Chanel so brilliantly captures this gritty, unglamorous origin story. It totally bypasses the glitz of her later empire and focuses on the sheer grit of her beginnings. It's the story of a young woman looking at the corseted, feathered, incredibly restrictive fashion of the early 20th century and seeing it for exactly what it was, a beautiful but completely suffocating cage. She wasn't just designing clothes, she was engineering a revolution in comfort, simplicity, and freedom. She had the absolute audacity to from menswear, to use humble jersey fabric, and to infuse it all with her own rebellious spirit. She didn't just create a brand, she created an entirely new way for women to move, to breathe, and to exist in the world. This quote right here, it truly captures the genius of her core philosophy. Her vision was never ever just about the garments themselves. It was about an entire lifestyle and ethos. It was about independence. It was about creating clothes that allowed women to work, to drive a car, to live active lives without being literally constrained by their own attire. I mean, think about it. At a time when women were mostly expected to be these decorative objects, she gave them practicality, and by extension, she gave them power. She understood that true style was an expression of modernity and freedom, and that incredibly radical idea has proven to be more timeless and more enduring than any single dress she ever designed. From the world of Parisian high fashion, we journey now to the seemingly quaint English countryside, and the story of Beatrix Potter. In Miss Potter, we meet a woman whose creative world was just as revolutionary, but in a much quieter, more subversive way. In Victorian England, a woman of her class was really only expected to do one thing, marry well, and manage a household. Art? Sure, that was a perfectly acceptable hobby. But a profession? Oh, absolutely not. Beatrix, however, saw her enchanting incredibly detailed drawings of animals, not as a mere pastime, but as her life's true calling. The film so beautifully portrays her gentle but completely firm struggle to be taken seriously by a room full of male publishers who just dismissed her bunny book. So what did she do? She fought for creative control, even self-publishing The Tale of Peter Rabbit initially. Her independence wasn't just creative, it was profoundly financial. The incredible success of her books allowed her to purchase her own farm and live completely on own terms, an extraordinary and deeply defiant feat for a woman of her era. That same fierce dedication to a unique vision connects us directly to another beloved children's author, Astrid Lindgren. Becoming Astrid takes us deep into her challenging, formative early years, long before she gave the world the wonderfully rebellious Pippi Longstocking. We see this vibrant, free-spirited young woman growing up in a conservative, deeply religious community in an unplanned pregnancy as a teenager leads to a truly heartbreaking choice. To give up her son temporarily to a foster family in Denmark just to protect him from the social stigma of illegitimacy. This period of immense pain, profound struggle, and this fierce, unwavering maternal love is what forged the incredible empathy and the deep understanding of a child's inner world that would later define all her work. You see, her characters weren't just whimsical, they were strong, independent, and often gloriously defiant of adult rules. A direct reflection of the spirit she herself had to cultivate just to survive her own youth. You know, thinking about Beatrix and Astrid really makes you pause, doesn't it? What does it truly take to hold on to that spark inside of you? That dream that feels so real and so vital to you? When the world around you, your family, your society, the entire industry is constantly telling you that it's frivolous, or it's impossible, or it's just plain inappropriate. I mean, it requires a kind of faith that is so hard to muster, not a faith in a higher power, but a faith in your own gut, in your own vision. It can be an incredibly lonely battle, but these women show us with their entire lives that it is a battle worth fighting. Their stories are this powerful reminder that sometimes the most important voice we can ever learn to listen to is our own. And if we're talking about fighting for one's voice, there is perhaps no story more potent, more direct than that of Sidonie Gabrielle Colette. The film Colette is just this vibrant, stunning depiction of a woman's long, drawn-out battle for creative ownership. She was plucked from her rural home by her charismatic but deeply controlling husband, Willie, and he pushes her to write the sensational Claudine novels, which were based on her own schoolgirl experiences. They become this massive, culture-shifting success, but the world believes they were written by him. The film meticulously charts her evolution from a naive country girl into a Parisian icon who slowly, painfully, and then with incredible defiance, begins to reclaim her own identity. She fights not just for the byline on her books, but for her right to live, to work, and to love exactly as she chooses, becoming a true trailblazer in literature and in life. It's the ultimate story of finding and freeing your own name from someone else's control. Now, we shift from the written word to the raw, undeniable power of the human voice itself with the absolutely staggering story of Edith Piaf. La Vie en Rose is less of a standard biopic and more of a visceral, almost operatic emotional experience. It absolutely refuses to shy away from the brutal realities of her life. We see her abandoned as a child, literally growing up in a brothel, singing on the streets of Paris for coins just to survive. Her life was a relentless cascade of tragedies. The loss of lovers, the death of her only child, debilitating addiction, chronic illness. And yet, From that immense, unimaginable well of pain came that voice, a voice that was raw and powerful and filled with a longing that spoke to the very soul of France after the war. Marion Cotillard's Oscar-winning transformation is just breathtaking. She shows us how Piaf's art wasn't just born from her pain, it was her pain transformed into something achingly, transcendently beautiful. She literally sang her broken heart out to the world. After the shattering intensity of Piaf's story, Julie and Julia offers a different, more joyful path to finding one's purpose. What I absolutely adore about this film is its brilliant parallel structure, because it shows that the quest for a voice is truly timeless. On one hand, we have Julia Child in post-war Paris, a woman brimming with life but feeling adrift without a purpose, who discovers her life's great passion in the hallowed halls of Le Cordon Bleu. She attacks French cooking with this infectious, fearless, and utterly charming enthusiasm. Then, decades later, we have Julie Powell, a woman feeling lost and uninspired in a cubicle in post-9/11 New York, who decides to cook all 524 of Julia's recipes in 1 year and blog about it. Both of these women, separated by a generation and an ocean, find their purpose, their confidence, and their voice through a shared love of food. It's such a beautiful story about how passion can be a lifeline, connecting us not only to ourselves, but to a lineage of women across time. And finally, in this section, we have a creator from our modern era, Joy Mangano. The film Joy is this whirlwind story of a single mom and inventor who built a business empire from her own homegrown ingenuity. Her story is one of relentless, dogged resilience. She wasn't an artist or a writer in the traditional sense, she was a problem solver. She invented the miracle mop because she saw a domestic need and knew in her gut that she could fix it. But having the idea, as the film shows so clearly, that was the easy part. The real fight was against patent thieves, shady business partners, and even a well-meaning but totally chaotic family that often held her back. She had to learn to be ruthless, to trust her gut in these high-stakes negotiations, and to command a room in the cutthroat world of television shopping. Joy's story is a powerful testament to the idea that a creative voice isn't just about art. It's about innovation, perseverance, and the sheer, unyielding will to build something from absolutely nothing. So as we look back at this first group of incredible women, we see this beautiful tapestry of courage, right? The essential lesson here is that whether it was Chanel's scissors, Potter's paintbrush, Piaf's voice, or Joy's blueprints, these women understood that their unique perspective was their greatest and most powerful asset. They teach us to trust that quiet inner voice, to protect our dreams fiercely against all doubt, to defy the boxes society tries to put us in, and to find our true, sustaining purpose in the things we are most passionate about. Their legacy is the permission they give all of us to go out and create our own. Okay, so now we pivot. We're moving from the internal battle of creation to the external, often brutal, fight for change. The women in this next section looked at the world around them, at its unfair laws, its deep-seated prejudices, its accepted injustices, and they refused to look away. They refused to stay silent. They are the activists, the advocates, and the warriors who decided that the rules didn't just need to be bent, they needed to be completely rewritten. Their stories are a profound call to action, reminding us that the courage of one person can, and very often does, change the world. We begin this section with one of the most fundamental fights for equality in modern history, the right to vote. The film Suffragette makes the brilliant choice not to focus on the famous upper-class leaders of the movement, but on Maud Watts, a fictional character who represents the countless ordinary working-class women who formed its backbone. She's a laundry worker, a wife, a mother who was drawn into the movement almost by accident, and she's initially very hesitant. But through her eyes, we experience the brutal reality of their fight. These women were not politely asking for the vote. They were engaging in civil disobedience, blowing up mailboxes, and smashing windows. They were imprisoned, they went on hunger strikes, and they were brutally force-fed by the state. They risked their jobs, their homes, their children, and their very lives for a future they might not even live to see. It's a raw, unflinching, and absolutely necessary look at the true, bloody cost of progress. The fight for a voice takes on a different but equally powerful form in The Help. Set in Jackson, Mississippi during the simmering civil rights movement of the 1960s, this film centers on the Black maids who make the incredibly courageous decision to tell their stories to a young, aspiring white writer. What's so deeply moving and radical here is the act of storytelling itself as a form of resistance. In a society that was structured to render them invisible and voiceless, Abilene Clark and Minnie Jackson risk everything, their livelihoods, their safety, to speak their truth. Their truth about the daily indignities, the casual cruelty, and the deep-seated racism they endure. The film beautifully balances the humor and the heartbreak of their lives, but it never, ever lets us forget the immense danger they faced. Their collective testimony, published anonymously in a book, sends shockwaves through their community, proving that sometimes the most revolutionary act you can commit is to simply tell a story that the world doesn't want to hear. This captures so powerfully what was truly at stake for these women. The world, the entire system, expected them to be silent. It expected them to be obedient, to accept the injustices of their time as just the way things are. They were told in 1,000 different ways to stay in their place, whether that was the home, the laundry, the kitchen, or just the background of someone else's life. But their defiant reality was to speak truth directly to power, to demand radical, fundamental change, and in doing so, they completely redefined the world, not just for themselves, but for all the generations of women that would follow. They didn't just challenge their reality, they shattered it. From those historical fights, we jump to a modern-day warrior, the absolute force of nature that is Erin Brockovich. I just love the defiant energy of this film. Here is this single mother, she's unemployed, with no formal legal training, who is completely, unapologetically herself. She's loud, she's bold, and she dresses in a way that the stuffy legal world constantly judges and underestimates. But underneath that exterior is a brilliant mind, a photographic memory, and this deep, unshakable sense of empathy for the underdog. She stumbles upon a case of a massive utility company, PG&E, that has been poisoning the water of a small town for years and systematically lying about it. She connects with the victims on a human level, earning their trust and painstakingly a case that every single lawyer told her was impossible. Her story is the ultimate David versus Goliath tale, proving that you don't need a fancy degree to fight for justice. You need passion, tenacity, and an absolute refusal to back down. Now let's look at a woman who fought injustice not with loud confrontations, but with the meticulous, brilliant, and strategic power of legal argument, the iconic Ruth Bader Ginsburg. On the Basis of Sex focuses on her early career, long before she became the notorious RBG. It shows her as a top student at Harvard Law, yet completely unable to get a job at any law firm simply because she was a woman. The film zeroes in on a single, pivotal early case she took on with her husband, Marty. And here's the genius of it. It was a case of gender discrimination against a man. It was a masterstroke of strategy. She understood that to dismantle the entire system of laws that discriminated against women, she had to show the all-male courts that any law based on gender stereotypes was irrational and unconstitutional. It was the first careful, brilliant step in a lifelong battle that would fundamentally change the legal landscape of America for women forever. This quote just perfectly encapsulates her revolutionary approach. She wasn't about fiery rhetoric or revolution in the streets. She was about methodical, strategic, and relentless progress within the system. She understood that you don't tear down a building that has stood for centuries with a single explosion. No, you dismantle it brick by brick, precedent by precedent. Her entire life's work is a testament to the power of patience, precision, and the unwavering belief that enduring change is built one hard-won case, one argument, one careful step at a time. It's such a powerful lesson in how to play the long game for justice. The fight for equality moves from the courtroom to the tennis court in Battle of the Sexes. This film chronicles the legendary 1973 tennis match between the #1 female player in the world, Billie Jean King, and the brazen, self-proclaimed male chauvinist, Bobby Riggs. But the film shows us it was so much more than just a tennis match. It was a cultural spectacle, a circus that put the burgeoning women's liberation movement front and center on a global stage. For Billie Jean King, the stakes were incredibly high. She was not only fighting for equal pay in her sport, but was also secretly grappling with her own sexuality at a time when being outed would have destroyed her career. She literally carried the hopes of millions of women on her shoulders into that arena, and her resounding victory was a massive, symbolic blow against sexism, proving that women deserved respect and equality both on the court and off. And that fight for respect in the world of sports continues with the incredible story of Christy Martin. Known as the coal miner's daughter, Christy Martin shattered barriers in the brutally male-dominated world of professional boxing back in the 90s. She was a true pioneer who brought women's boxing into the mainstream, fighting on the undercards of Mike Tyson's biggest matches and capturing the public's imagination. But as the upcoming film is set to explore, her most harrowing and life-threatening fight was actually outside the ring. She endured a deeply abusive marriage and a horrific attempt on her life by her own husband and trainer. Her story is one of astonishing survival and courage, a testament to a fighter's spirit in every single sense of the word. both inside the ropes and in the desperate fight for her own life and safety. You know, watching these women lay everything on the line, it really makes you think about your own convictions, doesn't it? We all see things in the world that we know just in our bones are wrong or unjust. These films challenge us to ask ourselves, what is the cause that ignites a fire in you? It doesn't have to be a global movement. It can be something in your community, in your workplace, or in your own family. What is the one thing you would be willing to stand up and fight for, even if it were difficult, even if you were scared? It's a really powerful question to sit with. From public battles to a deeply personal one made devastatingly public, we have the powerful story of Waris Dirie. Desert Flower tells her astonishing journey from a nomadic life in the Somali desert, where she was subjected to female genital mutilation as a young child, to becoming a world-famous supermodel walking the runways of Paris and Milan. But the most courageous part of her story is what she chose to do with that global platform. At the absolute height of her fame, she made the decision to speak out about her own trauma, breaking a global silence on a horrific practice that affects millions of women and girls. She turned her personal pain into a worldwide human rights campaign, becoming a UN Special Ambassador and dedicating her life to eradicating FGM. Her bravery in sharing a story so intimate and so painful is it's breathtaking. Our final story in this section is a fight not against a person or law, but against the crushing systemic circumstances of poverty. Queen of Katwe is the incredibly uplifting true story of Fiona Mutisi, a young girl from the slums of Katwe in Uganda. Living a life of extreme hardship, selling corn on the street, her world is irrevocably changed when she discovers the chess. Through the mentorship of a dedicated coach, she discovers she has a prodigious, once-in-a-generation talent. Chess becomes her way out. But the film doesn't romanticize her struggle. It shows the immense obstacles she and her family face. Poverty, floods, the constant threat of hunger. Her fight is a quiet, determined one, played out on a 64-square board, proving that talent, intellect, and determination can blossom in the most unlikely of places, and that a single opportunity can change the entire trajectory of a life. The key lesson from these incredible fighters, really, is that courage is contagious. The suffragettes, the maids, Erin, RBG, they all show us that a single voice speaking a difficult truth can ignite a fire that grows into a movement. They teach us to use whatever platform we have, whether it's a courtroom, a tennis court, or just a simple conversation, to advocate for what's good and right. And most importantly, they remind us that we should never, ever accept injustice as inevitable. The status quo is not set in stone. It's made by people, and it can be unmade by people too. For our final section, we're going to turn inward because sometimes the most monumental battle isn't fought against a corporation or a law or a societal norm, but against the ghosts of our own past. It's the fight against trauma, grief, loss, and the profound struggle to find or to reclaim our own identity. These are deeply introspective stories of women who had to lose themselves completely, sometimes in the most painful ways, in order to find their way back, stronger and more whole than they were before. We begin with the poignant, complicated story of Jeannette Walls. The Glass Castle is based on her incredible memoir of growing up in a family that was both deeply loving and profoundly dysfunctional. Her parents were brilliant, charismatic nonconformists who raised their children in extreme poverty, constantly on the move, teaching them about geology and physics, but also subjecting them to chaos, hunger, and neglect. The film navigates Jeannette's journey from this wild, unconventional childhood to becoming a successful journalist in New York, where she desperately tries to hide her past. Her journey is one of coming to terms with the deep scars of her upbringing, while also learning to embrace the fierce love and radical resilience it gave her. It's a powerful exploration of forgiveness, not just of her parents, but of herself, for the shame she carried for so long. That internal journey becomes breathtakingly literal and wild. The story of Cheryl Strayed, after the devastating death of her beloved mother, sends her into a total tailspin. Her marriage crumbles and she spirals into years of self-destructive behavior. Hitting absolute rock bottom with absolutely no hiking experience whatsoever, she makes the impulsive, almost primal decision to hike more than 1,000 miles of the punishing Pacific Crest Trail completely alone. This grueling physical journey, so beautifully captured in the film, becomes this powerful metaphor for her internal process of healing. Every painful step, every blister, every moment of terror and exhaustion on that trail is her way of confronting the grief and the self-loathing that she carries in her pack and in her heart. She isn't running from her pain. She's walking right through it, one agonizing, cleansing step at a time, to find her way back to the woman her mother raised her to be. This quote from her memoir is just so profound, and it speaks to the very heart of her journey, and really to any journey of healing. The physical challenges of the trail were immense, of course, but the real monumental battle was the one being waged in her mind. It was the fight against the fear, the regret, the insidious voice telling her she couldn't do it, that she wasn't worthy of being saved. She had to consciously rewrite the story she was telling herself, from one of a broken, lost woman to one of a resilient, capable survivor. It's a beautiful reminder that our inner narrative has the power to either doom us or ultimately to save us. Another story of travel as a direct path to self-discovery is Elizabeth Gilbert's Eat, Pray, Love. After a painful divorce leaves her feeling completely unmoored and lost, she makes the radical decision to embark on a year-long journey across the world, all by herself. The film follows her as she divides her year into 3 distinct experiences, seeking 3 different aspects of herself. In Italy, she rediscovers pleasure and the simple, sensual joy of living through food. In India, she confronts her own inner turmoil and seeks spiritual healing in an ashram. And finally, in Bali, she learns how to find balance between pleasure and devotion, and unexpectedly, she finds love again. Her journey is this deliberate, conscious quest to heal and reconnect with the parts of herself she had lost in her marriage and her grief. It's a story that gave so many people permission to ask themselves a vital question. What do I truly need to be happy? It's a gentle question, but a really important one. Thinking about Jeannette and Cheryl and Elizabeth, we see their journeys were all so deeply personal and absolutely necessary for their own healing and growth. So I invite you to ask yourself, what about you? It doesn't have to be a 1,000-mile hike or a trip around the world. Maybe the journey you need to take is the one of setting a boundary with a loved one, or of finally starting that creative hobby you've been putting off, of going to therapy, or forgiving someone, maybe even forgiving yourself. What is the journey, big or small, that your soul is quietly calling you to take for yourself? We conclude with a story of reclamation of a different but equally powerful kind, Molly Bloom. In Molly's Game, we see a woman who, after a devastating injury ends her Olympic skiing dreams, moves to Los Angeles, and stumbles into the world of organizing these exclusive, high-stakes underground poker games for Hollywood stars, billionaires, and the Russian mob. She builds an entire empire on her intelligence and her discretion, but when the FBI comes knocking, she loses everything. The real core of her journey in the film isn't about the crime. It's about her tenacious fight to reclaim her own name and her integrity. Pressured by the government to sell out her clients and save herself, she makes a choice rooted in a deep, personal code of ethics. Her story is a complex journey of navigating a treacherous, male-dominated world, and in the end, deciding that the only thing that truly matters, the only thing they can't take from you, is your own good name. And as we begin to wrap up, I want to bring our 3 themes together because these aren't just separate, convenient categories. They are deeply interconnected pillars that form what I like to think of as an architecture of resilience. To truly fight for a just world, you must first forge your own independent voice and know what you stand for. And often, it is the difficult journey back to self that gives you the strength, the clarity, and the conviction to find that voice and start that fight. They all feed into one another, creating this foundation of incredible, unbreakable strength. Coco before Chanel, Miss Potter, becoming Astrid, Colette, Lavian Rose, Julie and Julia, Joy, Suffragette, The Help, Erin Brockovich, On the Basis of Sex, Battle of the Sexes, Christy, Desert Flower, Queen of Katwe, The Glass Castle, Wild, Eat, Pray, Love, Molly's Game. You know, hearing them all together like that, it feels like a roll call of courage. Each of these 19 films, each of these 19 lives, is a powerful and undeniable testament to the fact that a woman's true, enduring strength is found above all else in her character. So as we leave these incredible women, I want to leave you with one final thought. Their stories are not just history to be observed. They are an invitation. They are an invitation to live our own lives with more courage, more purpose, and more resilience. They remind us that our own lives are stories being written every single day, with every choice we make, big and small. So the question isn't just what movies to watch next, but what story will you write with your one precious life? I would love to know which of these films or which woman's story inspires you the most. Please share it in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey today. If you felt as inspired as I did, please like this explainer, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more deep dives into great ideas. Until next time, be well and live your story.